Everyone thinks they know Superman, the cape, the smile, the Boy Scout, the symbol of hope. But what if that image is incomplete? What if the most powerful man on Earth isn't just a hero, but a mirror? Today, we explore the top 10 Superman comics that will change how you see him forever. 10. Superman Beyond. This is one of the most unusual Superman stories ever told. In Superman Beyond, Superman is pulled into a battle that takes place beyond our universe, in the space between realities called Bleed, to stop a cosmic vampire named Mandrak, who feeds on hope and endings. But this isn't just a sci-fi adventure. It's a deep, philosophical journey. Superman has to question what makes him who he is, even when he's far from Earth, from Lois, from anything familiar. He fights not for one world, but for the very idea of heroism. In the end, Superman becomes something more than flesh and bone. He becomes a symbol, a force that keeps stories alive when everything else is crumbling. He proves that even when you're alone in the dark, your story can still matter. This comic dares to ask, what if Superman wasn't just a man in a cape, but the last hope of fiction itself? 9. Superman, Red and Blue. Superman. Red and Blue isn't one story. It's a whole collection of short tales that focus on Superman's humanity rather than his powers. Each story is told using only red, blue, and white, stripping away the bling to highlight the emotion. In these pages, you won't find world-ending threats. You'll find Superman sitting with someone in pain, fixing a broken object, or offering quiet encouragement to a stranger. And each time, he reminds us of something important. Being there for someone matters just as much as saving the world. These stories change how we see Superman, not as a god among mortals, but as someone who chooses, again and again, to care, to show up, to listen. Red and Blue asks a simple but powerful question. What if Superman's greatest power isn't what he can do, but who he chooses to be? 8. Superman smashes the Klan. This isn't just a Superman story, it's about what he stands for when the stakes are real. Inspired by the 1940s radio serial that helped take down the real-life Ku Klux Klan, this modern adaptation brings Superman face to face with racism in 1940s America. A Chinese-American family is harassed by the Klan of the Fiery Cross, and Superman steps in to defend them. But as he fights for their safety, he also faces something personal. The truth that he himself is an outsider, an immigrant from another world. For the first time, Superman openly embraces his alien heritage, not with shame, but with pride. He understands that being different doesn't make him weaker. It makes him braver. This comic changes how we see Superman by showing us that true strength isn't just physical. It's moral. It's the courage to stand up to hate, even when it's easier to stay silent. And 7. Action Comics, number 775. What's so funny about truth, justice, and the American way? This story came out in 2001, right when the world was becoming more cynical. And it asked a powerful question. Is Superman still relevant in an age that celebrates violence? A brutal new team called the Elite takes center stage, winning public approval by executing villains. People start wondering if Superman is too soft, too noble for a modern world. But instead of changing himself to match the times, Superman confronts the Elite on his own terms. He shows that choosing mercy when you could destroy, choosing fairness when you're stronger than everyone else, that's what makes him a true hero. This comic forces us to think about what kind of power we admire, and reminds us that justice without compassion isn't justice at all. 6. Superman, Up in the Sky. What would Superman do to save just one child? Up in the sky, he hears about a little girl kidnapped and taken across the galaxy. There's no guarantee she's still alive, no assurance he'll find her. But Superman goes anyway. This story strips everything down. No Justice League, no Metropolis. Just Superman, alone, facing impossible odds. He wrestles with cosmic threats, self-doubt, and exhaustion. But he never stops. And that's what this story reveals. Superman's heroism isn't about the scale of the crisis. It's about his refusal to give up on anyone, no matter how small, no matter how far. Up in the Sky shows us just how much Superman is persistent. His belief that every life, no matter how distant, is worth everything. 5. Superman, American Alien. American Alien gives us something we rarely see. A Superman who makes mistakes. A Clark Kent who doesn't always know what he's doing. Told across 7 chapters from childhood to adulthood, this story shows us how a confused, emotional kid grows into Earth's greatest hero. We see Clark crash a yacht party and pretend to be Bruce Wayne. We see him lash out in anger. We see him doubt himself, love fiercely, and learn from failure. Each issue has a different artist, matching the tone of that life stage, chaotic, funny, terrifying, or heartbreaking. This comic reminds us that Superman wasn't born perfect. He became Superman by learning. It changes how we see him, not as a flawless icon, but as someone who had to fight to become the man he is. 4. Lex Luthor, Man of Steel. We've seen Superman through his own eyes, but what happens when we see him through the eyes of his greatest enemy? Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, flips the script and shows us Superman as a terrifying, unknowable force from the outside, looking in. In Luthor's eyes, Superman is too powerful, too alien, too perfect. A god who stands above humanity, watching, judging. And here's the twist. Sometimes you start to see Lex's point. That's what makes this story so powerful. It challenges your trust in Superman. It asks, what would it feel like to live in a world where someone like him exists, and you never had a choice in the matter? This comic forces us to confront the fear behind the legend. Not because Superman is bad, but because no one should be that powerful without being questioned. 3. Superman, Secret Identity. What if Superman existed in the real world? That's the premise of Secret Identity, a story about a boy named Clark Kent who lives in Kansas and is constantly teased because of his comic book name. Then one day, he develops Superman's powers. But this isn't a typical superhero tale. There are no costumes, no Justice League, and no alien invasions. Just a boy growing into a man, trying to live a quiet life while doing good in secret. His journey takes us through love, family, fear, and sacrifice. This comic changes how we see Superman by reminding us that being super isn't about fighting monsters. It's about living with integrity. Even in a world that doesn't believe in heroes, this Clark Kent becomes one. Secret Identity is a love letter to the idea of Superman, not the alien, not the icon, just a good person who chooses to care, even when no one is watching. Number 2. It's a bird. What if you were asked to write Superman, but you couldn't? That's the real-life setup behind It's a Bird, a deeply personal graphic novel where writer Stephen T. Siegel confronts a family history of genetic illness and his own emotional distance from Superman. The story isn't about Superman flying through space. It's about why we struggle to believe in him. It's about what Superman means to someone facing real pain, real fear, and the helplessness that no power can fix. As the writer explores childhood memories, doctor visits, and the anxiety of being powerless in the face of disease, Superman becomes a lens, one that magnifies both hope and denial. This story changes how we see Superman by showing how hard it is to connect with a symbol of perfection when life feels broken. And yet, somehow, that symbol still helps us try. Number 1. All-Star Superman. This is the ultimate Superman story. All-Star Superman takes everything the character represents and distills it into 12 perfect chapters. Here, Superman learns he's dying, and instead of retreating or lashing out, he chooses to spend his final days helping others, righting wrongs, preparing the world for his absence, and saying goodbye. He saves a suicidal girl with just a few words. He forgives his enemies. He comforts the people who will carry on without him. And in his last moments, he doesn't cry out in anger. He simply flies into the sun to save it. What makes this story so powerful isn't just the writing or the art. It's what it says about Superman. That even in death, he gives. That his strength isn't measured in power, but in grace. All-Star Superman isn't just the best Superman story. It's the one that will stay with you long after you turn the final page. These aren't just Superman stories. They're reflections of who we are, what we believe, and who we hope to be. Some show his strength, others show his doubt, but all of them remind us that Superman isn't just about powers, he's about choices. Which story changed your view of the Man of Steel? Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe for more cinematic deep dives. And remember, even the strongest heroes are only as great as the values they live by.